Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tzadik Gimel Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. Our Mishnah states various people who do not bring a Korban Pesach Rishon can bring a Korban Pesach Sheni. Amongst them is somebody who's derech rechoike, as the Torah mentions. He's at a far distance where he cannot bring a Korban Pesach Rishon Yudale ben Nisan. The Gemara asks, what happens if a Shaliach were to then check the Korban Pesach on his behalf? Is it going to be Huchshara, valid or not? Rav Nachman says yes, whereas Rabbi Sheshes argues. The Gemara now brings the following Braisa. Ton Rabbanon, Elu she'oisin es hasheni. These who can bring a Korban Pesach Sheni are the following. Hazovin v'hazovos, both male and female Zov. The Zov, the male Zov, who has an emission, it's not a carry, but it's similar to that, or a Zova. It's not the blood of menstruation, but outside of those days that she's menstruating. V'hamutzoroim v'hamutzoroim. Other types of tuma of a mitzora, male and female, who have been stricken with saras. V'nidois ubole nidois. Those women who are menstruating, or those who have been boil and nida. V'ayoldois. Women who have given birth. Hashoigim v'anusim v'amezidim. The Brisa includes also those who are shoigig. They miscalculate, they don't realize that today is Yud Daled ben Nisan. Or anusim, somebody who is very ill and he's prevented from bringing Korban Pesach Rishon. Or those who are even mezidim. The Brisa goes on to say v'tamei, and one who is tamei nefesh, came in contact with the dead body. V'shaya b'derech rechoika, and somebody who is far at a distance. Brisa now asks, Im Kain, if so, Lama nemar tamei, why, if indeed we have those who are shoigigin, and those who are anusim, and those who are mezidim, why mention specifically tamei lanefesh in the Torah? Ask the Gemara on the Brisa, Lama nemar, why doesn't it mention tamei nefesh in the Torah? Because if he would want to go ahead and bring a Korban Pesach on Yudalid ben Nisan, we won't let him do so. In other words, even if Yudalid ben Nisan comes out to be the 7th day of his period of Tahara, if he himself did not yet go ahead and toivel in the mikvah, even if he would subsequently, we can't allow somebody to bring a Korban Pesach on his behalf. Ella, the Gemara therefore amends the Brise's question and says, "In kain lama nemar b'derech rechoika." It didn't mean to say lama nemar b'derech tamei, but rather lama nemar b'derech rechoika. Why does the Torah single out derech rechoika? Answers the Brisa, lepoitre minakores, like the one, because it's poter minakores, to say that if indeed somebody who's derech rechoika does not bring the Korban Pesach on Yudal ben Nisan, he can bring it on Yudal b'Iyar and he will not be chayiv kores. The Gemara is now medaik ukiman da'amar hurtza, and this Brisa follows the opinion of Rav Nachman, because since the Brisa did not answer that the reason why derech rechoika is mentioned in the Torah is to tell you that if a shaliach were to then shech the Korban Pesach on behalf of a derech rechoika is not going to be valid, it must be that it is valid, like Rav Nachman says. The Gemara now questions, Isha b'sheinim mechayva? Is a woman chayiv to then bring a Korban Pesach sheni? After all, this Brisa mentions male and female, male mitzara and a mitzaras. Also, it mentions somebody who's a nida or somebody who's a zava. So ask the Gemara, is an Isha chayiv to bring a Korban Pesach sheni? V'ho Tanya, behold, it states in the Brisa, Yochel, I might think, lo you oisin es hasheni, ela tamei nefesh, v'shehaya b'derech rechoika. I might think that the ones who bring a Korban Pesach sheni is only somebody who's tamei when he came in contact with a dead body, or somebody's derech rechoika. Zavin umitzaroin, boyale nidas minayin. Where do we know these other males who are either zavin, or Metzara, or those who they were boil and nida, Talmud loymar. Therefore, the pasuk says ish ish in regards to Korban Pesach sheni, ish ish, emphasizing a man. So here we have a list in this brisa that includes only men, as the Torah then says, ish ish. So how can we then say before that women are obligated to bring korban pesach sheni? Gemara answers like kasha. It's not a difficulty because there's different tanoim. Ha Rabbi Yosi, ha Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yosi is of the opinion that indeed women are chayiv not only in korban pesach rishon but also korban pesach sheni. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda is the opinion that korban pesach rishon they're chayiv, whereas the sheni it's reshus. Rabbi Shimon says they're not even going to have a reshus. They're not even shaykh to korban pesach sheni. Al kapon is a machlokes tanoim. Tanu Rabban, the Gemara brings the following brisa in conjunction with this: chayiv kares al harishon, v'chayiv kares al hasheni. Divrei Rebbe. Rebbe says that if there's a situation where a person were, let's say, to be mazid in the korban pesach rishon and shogeg in korban pesach sheni, or vice versa, he was shogeg in korban pesach rishon and he was mazid not bringing a korban pesach sheni, then that person will be chayiv kares. In other words, you can't be chayiv kares more than once. But if he was bemazid in one of the two, then he's going to be held accountable and chayiv kares. That's the shita of Rebbe. Rabbi Nosson oimer chayiv kares ala rishon upoter ala sheni. Rabbi Nosson says he's going to be chayiv kares on the first korban pesach, but he will not be chayiv kares. He'll be poter on the second one. In other words, if he's mazid on Yudala ben Nisan, and that's why he didn't bring the korban pesach rishon, he's going to be chayiv kares. However, if he's shoigeg and he was only mazid in korban pesach sheni, he will be poter. Rabbi Chanina ben Akavya Omer, a third opinion says, Af al harishon eno chayiv kares ela im kain loy osa es hasheni. Says the third opinion of Chananya ben Akavya that if he does not bring the korban pesach rishon, even if it was bemazid, he can still go ahead and rectify that by bringing the korban pesach sheni. However, if he does not bring the korban pesach sheni, then he will be held accountable for not bringing the korban pesach rishon bemazid. The Gemara now comments these three shitas. These shitas are ve'ozel taimayhu. They go according to their own shitas in another place. The Tanya, like it says in the following brisa, Gershin is gaya ben shnei pasachim, a ger that became a ger between, let's say, on Rosh Chodesh Iyar, between the first and second korban pesach, or v'chein katan shehidio ben shnei psachim, or a katan became of age and then had puberty, had signs of sa'aros. Let's say also in Rosh Chodesh Iyar, between the two psachim, chayiv la'asas pesach sheni. Div Rebbe says then these individuals will be chayiv to bring a korban pesach sheni. Rabbi Nosson oimer. Rabbi Nosson says, kosher zokuk l'rishon zokuk l'sheni. Kosher ein zokuk l'rishon ein zokuk l'sheni. Rabbi Nosson says, since he wasn't obligated in the first korban pesach, then he's not obligated in the second korban pesach, because it's only the first korban pesach that he's held accountable for. So therefore, if he only became of age or became a ger subsequently, then he doesn't have a korban pesach sheni to then bring. The Gemara asks, what's the machlokes that we have over here between Rabbi and Rabbi Nosson? Rabbi savar sheni regel b'fnei atzmoihu. Rabbi is of the opinion that the korban pesach sheni is a separate regel, and therefore he must bring the korban pesach rishon, must bring korban pesach sheni, and therefore, in the case where somebody who became a bar mitzvah or a ger, if he didn't bring korban pesach rishon, he's chai to bring korban pesach sheni. So Rabbi is l'shitoso, who says that if he does not bring the korban pesach rishon because he was shoigeg, now when he is mazid korban pesach sheni, he will be held accountable with chayiv kares. Rabbi Nosson saw v'sheni tashlumin. The rishon who? Rabbi Nosson has the opinion that the sheni is a substitute, it's a tashlumin for the korban pesach rishon, and therefore he says takuni l'rishon lo matkin le. Therefore, he says, since he didn't have an obligation in the Rishon, so there's not going to be an obligation in the second one. There's nothing misakin. And therefore comes Pesach Sheni, the Ger or the Bar Mitzvah will not be chayiv at all. And that's again like Rabbi Nelson's Shita before. that says he's chayiv, a person's chayiv if he's only mazid in the Rishon. But if he's shoygig in the Rishon, even if he's mazid not bringing a Korban Pesach Sheni, he will not be chayiv a chiyuv of kares. Reb Chananya ben Akavya Sova Sheni takanta the Rishonu. He says that the Sheni is a takon of the Rishon, and that's the sheet of Reb Chananya ben Akavya, the shitoso that says that the Sheni really is coming to the misakein. Whatever the Rishon was not brought, the Sheni will then be misakein. So too over here, the Ger would also bring a Korban Pesach Sheni, will be a tikkun, even though himself didn't have a chiyuv for the Rishon, and therefore it comes out that we have Rebbe and Rebbe Nosson Lishitosoi. Now the Gemara points out the Shloishten Mikra Echad Darshu, the three different Tanoim, Rebbe, Rebbe Nosson, and Rav Chananya ben Akavya, they darshan the same pasuk. This pasuk in regard to Korban Pesach Sheni, it states in that pasuk, V'ha'ish, I'll read you the pasuk. Ha'ish asher hu tahor, a person who is tahor, that means he did not come in contact with a mace. Ubederech lo haya, or he was not in a distant road, so he doesn't have the tour of tamei la nefesh or of derech rechoika. The pasuk goes on to say v'chol dalas is a pesach, and nonetheless, even though he's tahor and he's not derech rechoika, he desires from being a Korban Pesach. V'nichres hanefesh ahi me'amel. He will then have the chiyuv kares. The pasuk concludes ki Korban Hashem lo hikriv b'mayadoi. He did not bring a Korban Hashem in his appointed time. Cheto yisa ha'ishahu. So there are three different opinions over here how to darshan this pasuk, and because of the way they darshan the pasuk, that's how they have their shita as follows: V'shloshen mikra echad darshu ha'ish asher hu tohor ubederech lo haya. The man who is tohor and he's not in a distant place. Rebbe Sovar, Rebbe said, he holds v'chol dal la'asois ha'pesach v'nichus. The pasuk that goes on to say that he then desisted from bringing Korban Pesach, he will be chayiv kares. Doloi ovad varishon, because he did not bring Korban Pesach rishon. Inami, he learns then when it says in the pasuk ki Korban Hashem lo hikriv. It means inami. That means if he will not bring a Korban Pesach la Hashem, meaning the Korban Pesach sheni lo hikriv madoi, the besheni, the second Korban Pesach on Yudal bet Iyar, the same individual. That person, it says, he will be obligated according to Rabbi Mumai Deha Chetoyi. So what's meant in the end of the pasuk when it says that individual who also did not bring a Korban Pesach Sheni, he'll be Yisa es Chetoy. Karesu, Rabbi says that's a chiyuv kares. On top of Tzadik Gimel Beis, and he explains how we learn that out. Kisovar megadef hainu mevarach Hashem. Because Rabbi holds that megadef, somebody who's blasphemy, where it states that he's chayev kares, that is defined as somebody who's mevarech Hashem, somebody who curses Chalila es Hashem. V'ksiv, and it's written, gabe somebody who's mevarech es Hashem, v'nosoi chetoy. You use the same language of nosoi cheto when it says he's chayev kares. The gomar hai chetoy dehocha mecheto dehasam, and therefore the hai cheto over here in regards to somebody who neglects to bring a Korban Pesach Sheni, we learn out a gezerah shava from the Mevarech Hashem that he's chayev kares. Malahalan kares afkan nami kares. So that's how Rebbe explains the pasuk, whereby he's going to be chayev kares for not only being mazid in the Rishon, but even if he was shogig in the Rishon, he was mazid in the Sheni, he's going to be chayev kares. Rabbi Nosson sovar v'chodal las is a pesach v'nichraso. The first part of the pasuk referring to Korban Pesach Rishon, and he desisted even though he was tahor and he was not a derech rechoika, and nonetheless he was mazid and did not bring a Korban Pesach Rishon, he'll get chayev kares. Dehai ki. However, he learns the pasuk when it says ki in the hemshech of the pasuk regarding to a Korban Pesach Sheni, it means to say a reason. Loshin dehahu. It's a deha. Behold, to explain that which is just said, that he's chayev a Korban Pesach Rishon. This is what the Torah says. Korban Hashem lo hikri b'ma'adoi b'rishon. Why is he chayev a Korban Pesach Rishon? Because he did not. Why is he chayev kares for not bringing Korban Pesach Rishon? Because he did not bring the Korban Pesach Rishon in its appointed time. In other words, the word ki in the pasuk can be read as either if, which was read by Rebbe, or behold, explaining what was just said. And that's how Rabbi Lesin explains. Now the Gemara explains, asks, Haycheto Yisa, at the end of the pasuk, my avidle. What does Rabbi Lesin do with those words? He already explains that the Korban Pesach Rishon, when a person is going to be neglectful and he's amazing, he's going to be chayiv kores. That's what the rest of the pasuk says. So what is that Yisa Cheto coming to add? Kisovar, Rabbi Lesin explains, Begadef live hainu mevarech Hashem. Megadef, he doesn't learn blasphemy as defined as somebody who's mevarech Hashem. He learns that it's somebody who's singing praises to Avodah Zarah. And therefore, that's chayiv kores. Where do we know that somebody who's mevarech Hashem is chayiv kores? Because v'gamar hai cheto dahasa mecheto dahacha. Because when it says cheto over there in regards to mevarech Hashem, we learn a gezer shava to over here, from over here. Ma halcha kores af hasam kores. Just like over here he's chayiv kores, so too over there he's going to be chayiv kores when he's mevarech Hashem. Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya Sovar, where does he know to say that it's a tikkun that is coming to then rectify, the Korban Pesach is going to rectify, the Pesach Sheni is going to rectify by the Korban Pesach Rishon? Where does he know that? The way he learns the pasuk is follows. In regards to somebody who's mazid by Korban Pesach Rishon, he's chayiv kores. And he also learns the word like Rabbi in the sense that it says if, but he doesn't learn that it's going to be a continuation, but rather a new thought. Korban Hashem lo hikiv, meaning to say, in condition, if he does not bring a Korban Hashem, b'moyadoi b'sheni, this in its point in time, referring to the Korban Pesach Sheni, then it's conditional. That means the Korban Pesach Rishon that he was mevatel b'mezi, that it's chayiv kores for, if he does not bring a Korban Pesach Sheni, then indeed he will then be chayiv the kores for the Korban Pesach Rishon. In other words, it's conditional. And that's how Rav Chananya ben Akavya learns. Ask the Gemara, V'hai cheto yisa, at the end of the pasuk, my avid lei. What does he do with the pasuk? What is cheto yisa? Hare, he says it's conditional that it will give chayiv kores for the Rishon. So what is the additional words of V'hai cheto yisa? The Gemara answers, Kedamon, just as we explained previously, when we explained Rabbi Lesin, that it's coming to explain that you get chayiv kores for somebody who's mevarech Hashem from the gezer shav cheto cheto. Hilkach, the more now concludes the following summation. Hazid bezeu mezeh divrei kol chayiv. If one who is mazid both in the Korban Pesach Rishon as well as the Korban Pesach Sheni and mevatel both of them b'mazid, then everybody would agree that he's going to be chayiv kores. Shogag bezeh divrei kol poter. However, if he's shogeg in the Yudal ben Nisan as well as Yudal ben Iyar, then he's going to be poter, because after all, you can't be chayiv for kores for being b'shoigig. Hazy b'rishon v'shogag b'sheni. If he was mazid and mevatel the Korban Pesach Rishon and Yudal ben Nisan, then both Rabbi and Rabbi Lesin were mechayiv, even though he was shoigig b'sheni, because he was mazid b'rishon. Whereas Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya would say poter, because after all, since it was conditional, and after all, he only was b'shogi b'sheni, he's going to be poter. Shogag b'rishon v'hizid b'sheni. If he was shogi b'rishon and he was mazid on sheni, then it comes out l'Rebbe chayiv, because Rebbe says there's two different regels, and therefore, even though he was only shogi b'rishon, but he was made b'sheni, he's going to be chayiv. The Rabbi Lesin, Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya poter. Whereas according to Rabbi Lesin, Rabbi Chananya ben Akavya, he'll be poter because the first one he's going to only be held accountable by being mazid.